20 years ago today, Microsoft would release a gaming console that would change an entire generation. On November 22nd, 2005, Microsoft released the Xbox 360, a video game console for the 7th generation and a foray into HD gaming. People may not realize it nowadays, but during the late 2000s, early 2010s, this was one of the hottest things anyone could have. Hey guys, Sidison here. Today is a very special video for a very special console. I'm going to be going over the history along with my very personal experiences with the Xbox 360. Our story begins at the new millennium, when the 6th generation consoles were at full swing. This generation of consoles would bring the death of Sega as a console maker, but would also bring the rise of Xbox. Long story short, Xbox was afraid of Sony attacking their lucrative PC market, so they greenlit the Xbox as a way to fight against Sony. Xbox still lost that generation sales-wise, but they were able to plant a very strong foothold with iconic games and their ace card, online gaming with Xbox Live, a service that was quite advanced for its time. To stay ahead of the competition, Xbox began their next generation of consoles, named the Xbox 2 at the time. Development started as early as February in 2003, and Xbox would be going around grabbing developers and the most advanced parts they could find. Both Sony and Nintendo were planning a 2006 release, and Xbox would undercut them both by a year, something that would soon later bite them in the back. Microsoft unveiled the console on May 12, 2005 as the Xbox 360, and soon announced a November 2005 release, hoping that the Sony would delay the PS3, which they did actually. The console officially went on sale on November 22, 2005, and had a pretty stacked lineup of launch titles, including bangers like Perfect Dark Zero, Call of Duty 2, and Need for Speed Most Wanted. Consoles were flying off shelves and things were smooth sailing. Until it wasn't. Due to the somewhat rushed development of the console, many users started to notice hardware issues with their consoles, including actual failures. Now known as the Red Ring of Death, this was a massive problem for an otherwise flawless console launch. Now, I never had the OG version of the 360, which was susceptible to the Red Ring of Death, so I can't say from personal experience, but it was so bad that it cost them millions of dollars in repairs and lawsuits and just tarnished the Xbox image. They were only able to somewhat resolve the issue by 2009 with revised models, but it was a massive setback. But despite these setbacks, Xbox still had a fight to finish. The following year, Sony would announce the PlayStation 3 and Nintendo would announce the Wii. The Wii honestly was a runaway success and outsold both consoles due to honestly being marketed as both a casual and a Nintendo enthusiast console. Now, I still believe that the Wii is an amazing console, but it's kind of not really a competitor to the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3. Speaking of which, Sony would also launch the PlayStation 3 on November 11, 2006. Sony would literally shove as much stuff as they could into the PlayStation 3 to try to make it the ultimate PlayStation, which resulted in it costing a massive $600, which is like $960 in 2025 money. So it had a very rocky launch as well and very slow sales with a lower than expected hype. These original fat consoles of the PlayStation 3 are now heavily desired, but back then, it was barely anybody wanted to spend that kind of money on just a new PlayStation. Unlike the Xbox we know nowadays, Microsoft back then was rough and aggressive with their game lineups and exclusives. Xbox would literally pay studios to only release on the Xbox 360 and cancel any development for the PS3 versions. And this was honestly the kind of attitude that made the console wars of my childhood so heated and personal. Even as school children in elementary school, we would literally be friends and enemies based on what gaming console we had and what games we could play together. Which, looking back, is kind of funny and honestly childish, but I mean, what did you expect from elementary school students? But back then, Xbox honestly had an armament of exclusive games. I mean, just off the top of my head, we got Gears of War, Crackdown, Fable, Project Gotham, Forza Motorsport, and Forza Horizon, and of course, the star of the show, Halo. In total, the Xbox 360 had around 220 games that were exclusive to the console, which is probably 220 more than what the Series X has in terms of exclusivity. But by far the biggest of these exclusive games was Halo 3. Halo 3 was so anticipated and hyped back then that it even took up billboards and advertising spaces on Times Square. It was so hyped, it was basically comparable to the hype we have nowadays to GTA 6. And it was a system seller. It pushed console sales by a lot, even despite hardware issues and stuff like that. But along with these first-party games, Xbox would also receive a massive amount of third-party games like GTA 4, Call of Duty Modern Warfare, the original trilogy, the Orange Box by Valve, Battlefield 3, the first 3 Assassin's 3 games, Elder Scrolls, and honestly just many more. This was also when Xbox would introduce Live Arcade, which introduced people to so many iconic and legendary indie games like Castle Crashers and Geometry Wars. In 2010, Microsoft released the Xbox 360 Slim, a redesign that was meant to replace both the Elite and the arcade models. This redesign honestly fixed a lot of the hardware issues and the rendering of death that plagued the previous versions of the console, but also included and introduced a brand new motion sensor known as the Kinect, which was meant to compete against the Wii and appeal to casual gamers. But this was honestly where the story gets way more personal, because this was my very first gaming console, and honestly what introduced me to gaming and Xbox as a whole. I remember my uncle buying me an Xbox 360 Slim for Christmas in 2011. I was maybe around 6 or 7, and all the popular kids in my class had an Xbox 360, and I really wanted one. Not to mention, there was a lot of racing games that were either exclusive or just better on the Xbox 360. I believe my console was bundled along with Forza Motorsport 4, and I was amazed by that game. Now, I wasn't very good at it, or good at any games back then, but it felt magical, and it was an amazing experience. Hearing the likes of Jeremy Clarkson talk about cars and driving around in exotics. Over the years, I would also collect other games like my most favorite Need for Speed Hot Pursuit, as well as Burnout Paradise, Red Dead Redemption 1, Midnight Club LA, and Forza Horizon, the first game, later on. But honestly, my most memorable and beloved game would only come out a year later. Minecraft wasn't exclusive on the Xbox 360. It was on PC a year earlier, but its release on the Xbox 360 was probably one of the biggest reasons why it's so ingrained in everybody's head. I remember when I was in elementary school, everybody back then had or wanted Minecraft, and they wanted it for the Xbox 360. Minecraft back then was really popular, just like we have Fortnite kids or Roblox kids, but nowadays, back then there were Minecraft kids. Every kid back then would spend hours on Xbox Live building and playing in Minecraft, and I was definitely one of those Minecraft kids. Entire YouTube channels would be based on the Xbox 360 version of Minecraft, and like I said, it was a cultural phenomenon and an icon in pop culture. The game would later be ported to PlayStation 3 later, and after that you'd have it on newer consoles, but I feel like Minecraft was at home on the Xbox 360 as well as on PC. As the 7th generation of consoles started to wrap up and anticipation for the 8th generation of consoles grew, great games still continued to pour in, such as like Skyrim, Black Ops 2, GTA 5, and these pushed the hardware of the Xbox 360 to the limit and also made sure that the 360 would end in a bang. But this would also be the last time Xbox was at its height with its popularity. In May of 2013, Microsoft would announce that the successor of the Xbox 360 would be the Xbox One. Now, I might make a video later about the Xbox One in the future, but to summarize, it was one of Xbox's biggest disasters in terms of its launch. So many anti-consumer decisions were made, and it killed the brand overnight. Xbox was honestly really complacent, and they thought that they would see the same success as the Xbox 360. Weirdly enough, this would also be when the final iteration of the Xbox 360 would be released, known as the Xbox 360E. It was a budget and simplified version of the console, but it was frankly released at the wrong time. It was by far the most forgettable version of the Xbox 360, but it did also mean the console would trudge along until 2016. Despite its successor being the downfall of Xbox and one that it still hasn't recovered from today, the Xbox 360 was still a massive success in retrospect. The 7th generation of video game consoles was honestly peak, and it changed an entire generation. There were honestly no bad consoles that were made during that era. Even today, many people look back at those consoles fondly, and there are even some people that refuse to upgrade to their modern counterparts and still manage to use and try to run these old consoles. Absolute legends, honestly, but it still feels like a modern console and even holds its own compared to the modern 9th generation consoles we have today. But the Xbox 360 wasn't just a console, it was a cultural icon. For me, it was the introduction to gaming and one of the sole reasons that I still do YouTube and do all of these stuff. And for millions of us, it was a console that defined a generation. Hope y'all enjoyed this very special video I put together. I would really love it if y'all would consider supporting the channel with all the hard work I put in for this. But anyways, hope y'all have a good rest of your day. Bye.